Hello everyone and welcome to the first game we're gonna cover from round 5 of the FIDE Grand Swiss. It just finished and I know probably some of you want to see other games as there are so many great games being played on the top boards, but this is a big one. Youngest Grandmaster ever, Abhimanyu Mishra, faces youngest world champion ever, Gukesh Domaraju. It's really a brutal game, and I don't know how many of you were actually listening in the previous video. I mentioned that Abhimanyu and Gukesh are amongst the 5 people ever to achieve the title of Grandmaster prior, to the age of 13, or as they were still 12 years old. Other 3 being Sergei Karyakin, Pragnananda, and the 5th one is the Turkish gentleman Yavuz Khan Erdomus. And definitely not an easy thing, becoming a grandmaster so young, because if you remember, Bobby Fischer was the youngest. He became a grandmaster at the age of 16, and then he qualified for the candidates tournament, and it took a lot of years for Judith Polgar to overtake Bobby Fischer's record, and then it would take a lot more years for Petr Leko to overtake Judith's record, as he became a grandmaster at 14, and these gentlemen are now becoming grandmasters at 12. So it is, pretty incredible. And the game is also weird, but also a lot of fun. So let's check it out. It will definitely mean a lot for the standings, and also whoever does well might qualify for the candidates tournament. So let's check it out. Abhimanyu with white opens with pawn to e4. Sorry about that. We have pawn to e5, and also I forgot to mention today's Petr Leko's birthday. If you guys run into him on the street, feel free to wish him a happy birthday. e5, we have knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to c4. We have bishop to c5, the Giuoco Piano game, and Abhimanyu goes for pawn to d3. Not going for the strongest move, but what are you going to do? Knight to f6, we have bishop to g5 and pawn to h6. So the standard Giuoco Pianissimo, bishop to h4 and pawn to a6. d6 is the standard move here. Pawn to a6 is extremely rare, and obviously something Gukesh has prepared. And as you can see by the situation on the clocks, both of them are playing instantly. We have castles kingside. There are a couple of games where c3 was played, castles kingside. As a reply to a6 is a new move. So now, as of move 7, we have a completely new game. So both of them trying to surprise each other. d6, we have pawn to c3 and bishop to a7. So all pretty standard Giuoco Pianissimo moves. Knight b to d2, and Gukesh strikes on the king side. Pawn to g5, chases away the bishop, bishop g3, and now knight to h7. And already it's looking like something is coming your way. Is pawn to f5 coming? Is pawn to g4 coming? Is pawn to h5 coming? So you have to take all of this into consideration. And Abhimanyu plays pawn to d4, and he burned quite a lot of time here, over 20 minutes. And Gukesh just replies pawn to h5, played instantly. And this is, I believe, the problem of the position. The top move recommended by the engine is pawn to h4. Then you go pawn to g4, you chase away the knight, then you capture on d4, and then white can even give up a pawn, go knight e3, let's say captures, b captures on c3, and you have this position where it's a fine for both white and black, and white is the one definitely looking for the initiative here. But after pawn to h5, Abhimanyu played d captures on e5. He didn't play the h4 top move recommended by the engine, he actually just captured a pawn, and now he's inviting pawn to h4 or pawn to g4, and Gukesh has to figure out what to do here. And it seems that Gukesh has messed up his preparation. He remembered that that you were supposed to push a pawn. He just pushes the wrong pawn. He played pawn to g4. You have to play pawn to h4. You win a piece, and then it's fine. Knight captures, g captures, and then after queen to h5, threatening checkmate, you defend against checkmate, and now after bishop captures on h4, attacking the queen, you even go queen to f8. And now, it looks scary, but this is even easier and nicer to play for black. You get the semi-open g file for the rook, the bishop can come into the game, the dark square bishop on a7 is a monster, so, this is perfectly fine, even though it looks a little bit weird. But Gukesh played pawn to g4, attacked the knight, hoping for a retreat with something like knight h4 or knight e1, but Abhimanyu just goes e captures on d6, and he sacrifices the knight on f3. So you can capture the pawn and not capture the knight, but then your position is what is this? Where is your king going? I mean, objectively, it is lost. So Gukesh has to accept the piece. He plays g captures on f3, and now d captures on c7, attacking Gukesh's queen, queen e7, knight captures on f3, and now you could go for something maybe like rook g8 and queen d7, try to go for a queen trade. Gukesh goes for bishop to g4. He pins the knight and pawn to h3 immediately by Abhimanyu, asking, what do you do with this bishop? Do you develop my queen for free, or do you go back? Gukesh decides to go back, bishop to e6, and now comes bishop to d6. The problem for Gukesh is that pretty much any move, bishop captures on e6, bishop to d5, bishop to d6, these are all great moves for Abhimanyu, and he can just choose whichever he wants. Queen to d7, we have bishop captures on e6, queen captures, and now pawn to e5. And for the price of one piece, Abhimanyu has this beautiful setup here, which looks, again, a little bit weird, but Gukesh does have some problems. He will have to get the king to d7 if he wants to get the rook into the game. And the question is, can Gukesh survive this? And is this still something that Gukesh can use to attack the white king? Maybe. He goes king d7. Okay, makes sense. You don't really have any good discoveries with this bishop, and you want to get the rook into the game. And Abhimanyu now goes knight to d4. And this is not the way to play. Actually, with this move, Abhimanyu allows Gukesh to get back into the game. You should move the king, play king h1, and then the game plan should be a4, b4, and b5. And that's how you make progress. But, playing a world champion, time on the clock is ticking, knight to d4 is also a very nice move. Gukesh plays bishop captures on d4. Probably Abhimanyu was also happy that he won Gukesh's strong bishop, but there is a way out. C captures, and now queen to d5, inviting queen captures on h5, but this is all Gukesh's plan. We have queen captures on h5, and now knight to f6, attacking the queen, so you have to move it. And also, if you capture on if you capture, not with the queen, if you capture with the knight on d4, that's not really going to work because there's queen g4 check, and now there's no square for your king. You have to go to c6, then comes rook f to c1 check, and after king to b6, there's bishop to c5, and okay, you win the knight, but also the black king probably gets checkmated within a few moves. So after queen captures on h5, knight to f6, this is how Gukesh activates. We have queen to f5 check and queen to e6, offering a queen trade. And Abhimanyu goes for it. Queen captures, we have f captures, and now pawn to f4, defending the pawn on e5 and also preparing pawn to f5. It seems like the d4 pawn is hanging, but here knight captures on d4. Of course, you blunder the knight. So knight to d5, you have to move it, and now pawn to f5. We have e captures on f5, rook captures, and now knight captures on d4, attacking the rook, rook f7 check, and king to e6. And Gukesh was lost at some point in the game, but now his position is perfectly fine. However, really complicated. There are two knights in the game, and calculating one knight is one thing. Calculating two knights, that's just exponential. We have rook a to f1, rook h to g8, and now pawn to g4. And there really aren't all that many squares that Gukesh's king can use, or rather, there are none. If this knight moves, then okay, you can go to d5. So you have to be very careful. We have knight to b5, putting pressure on the c7 pawn. Rook to h7. We have rook to g6, stopping any rook to h6 ideas, although rook to h8 does the same thing, and trading off a pair of rooks would go a long way. As yes, it's now an endgame, but you're still kind of trying to defend against checkmate, and you have 6 minutes on the clock. So rook to g6, and now we have rook f to f7. The position is again very, very good, but rook d1 is the sneaky move to find. like we said, the d5 square is the only square for the black king. And now even if the knight moves, you take away the d5 square, and okay, then you can just checkmate the black king. Of course, you're not going to checkmate the black king because Gukesh would never move the knight. But that means that Gukesh would be playing without the knight. And then you kick away this knight with a4, and slowly but surely you make progress. But after rook g6, rook f to f7 was played, which is now, again, gives an equal position, but looks scary and very, very difficult to play, and Gukesh goes rook to c8. If you really wanted to call it a day, Gukesh could just trade here. You have to calculate it precisely. E captures, and then after king captures, rook d7 check, and after king to c6, you go rook to d8. It seems like white is winning, but hello, rook to g8. So you're not going to be winning. And after rook to h6 with check, you don't, of course, capture, but you go back. You defend the knight here, and now rook d7 defends the pawn, and now the position is perfectly fine. But after rook f to f7, I guess Gukesh was still playing this for a win. He played rook to c8. We have rook to d7 by Abhimanyu, and the rook to h6. Now, trying to trade this rook for this rook, Abhimanyu says nope, not doing that, and now rook captures on h3. Gukesh grabs a pawn. Okay, we have pawn to a4, kicking away Gukesh's knight, knight to d4, and bishop to c5. Challenging the knight, we have knight e2 check, king to f1, and now Gukesh played knight e to f4, sorry, knight e to f4, and it seems like he could be the one, on his way to winning this game, as well, that white king is on f1. Maybe you can somehow create some sort of a mating net with the two knights and two rooks, but the reality is quite different. The reality of it is that Abhimanyu is the one who is completely winning here, but only if you find the move that Gukesh missed. So try to do it while I give you a couple of seconds. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this incredible checkmating sequence. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to d4. Yes, defending the e5 pawn and the threat rook to d6 checkmate. There's nothing you can do. The pawn covers the f5 square, and now with the e5 pawn defended, that's all there is to it. And Gukesh realized there is really nothing more to be done here. But he's up a piece, so maybe he can give up a piece to survive checkmate. He plays rook f3 check, king to e1, and now knight to d3 check. We have king to d2. This is move 39. One more move needs to be made to reach time control, and it's the one that Gukesh doesn't want to make, but he has to do it. He has to give back the piece, otherwise next move rook to d6 will be checkmate. So he plays knight captures on e5, bishop captures on e5, king captures on e5, and now rook to g5 with check. Finally picks up the knight on d5. We have king to e6 and rook g captures on d5. And while you could play rook captures on c7, hoping to trade, it's not really much of a trade. Captures, you also lose on b7, and this is easily winning for white. So after rook g captures on d5, we have rook to b3, defending b7 and also putting pressure on b2. Rook 7 to d6 with check. We have king to e7, rook d7 check, king to e6, and now rook 5 to d6 check, king to e5, and rook to d3. Offering a trade and giving up the b2 pawn because you really don't need it. So rook captures, king to c1, and now rook to h2, but now it's Abhimanyu's turn. Pawn to g5. The passed pawn starts marching forward. King to f5, and now rook 3 to d5 with check. We have king to e6, and now rook 5 to rook 5 to d6 with check. King to e5, and now rook to d2, offering a rook trade, as this position is completely winning, and both of them know it. We have rook to h1 check. Of course, Gukesh declines the trade. King to b2 and king to f5, followed by rook to g7. Again, the best move. To me, rook g2 looks, like the way to play, but even though rook to g2 will win you the game, the engine just prefers Abhimanyu's move a lot more. I guess to maybe prevent everything, even a rook g, even king g6, but also after the king comes to e6, then you cannot touch anything here. So maybe it's the precise way to go. Not maybe, it's definitely the precise way to go. And then later you move the rook and advance the pawn. So rook h to h8, and we have rook to f2 with check. Probably this is the reason, as now the king has to go to the left. We have king to e5, pawn to g6. We have rook to h4 going after the a pawn, and rook g to f7, just making room for the pass pawn to reach the final destination. We have pawn to b5. There's no time for anything. Gukesh will try a few more moves. A captures, and pawn to g7. Rook to b4 check. We have king to c3, rook to c4 with check, king to b3, and he was in this position on move 61 that world champion Gukesh Domaraju resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Once you make a move, king to e6, let's say, it's all that matters is rook f8, and now you either do whatever, and then the maybe, yeah, okay, if you capture, then you just bring a queen into the game. But if you allow this and the queen comes into the game, it seems like you might have some sort of a perpetual here, but you really don't. The queen pawns with check, or rather the pawn queens with check, and there's nothing for Gukesh to even try here. So after king b3, he resigned, and Abhimanyu Mishra, like I said, he holds the record of being the youngest person ever to become a grandmaster. Now he holds another one. He's the youngest player ever to defeat a classical world champion in a classical game. Really incredible stuff. Maybe even the youngest person ever to defeat a world champion. So really incredible stuff. This puts him on 4 points, I believe, and he's sharing second place with everyone. I'm not going to spoil some other results because I will show some other games, but he's doing incredibly well. And with this win, everything is a possibility, even the candidates tournament. And he defeated Gukesh, but also let me just show you. He defeated Gukesh, but also in round 1 he drew Yakuboev, then 2 victories against Alexis Arana and Yuan Yi, then a draw versus Pragnananda, and then a victory versus Gukesh. So if anyone told you that any player in the world facing Prag and Gukesh could have a 1.5 out of 2, you'd be like, okay, yes, he is Magnus, but no, he is Abhimanyu Mishra. So yeah, there we have it. Brilliant stuff by Abhimanyu. I always mention that in that one interview he said that he had one goal, and it is to become world champion. And obviously he is working very hard towards his goal. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Knightmaster Bishop, Christian Fisher, Carmen Polifronio, Austin Wheeler, and Ali Urukoglu for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon. Have an excellent rest of your day.